Oh, hey there, folks. Just letting you know this is Joe Zimmerman part 2, or rather 2.0. We tried to do this interview back in December of 2023, and we did the interview, and then the audio came out all warped, and I did everything I could to try and fix it, but I am not an audio engineer, and I was unable to fix it myself. But Joe was able to give me more of his time and do this all over again. We waited a handful of months so that it's fresh and new, and so if there's a reference made to, oh yeah, when you asked me this before, or, oh, I remember that, or whatever, that might happen, it's only because I did ask him all of these questions before and we did record before. Anyway, thank you folks so much for listening. Joe, thank you so much for giving me your time again. Hopefully you all find all of his stuff because he is on tour with one of my favorite comics that is working right now. And yeah, that's it. Let's get on with this show. Oh, hi, you're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky few that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I used to work in a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So let's eat. I'd like to welcome our guest, Joe Zimmerman. Joe grew up in Morgantown, West Virginia, and started his comedy career in North Carolina. In 2012, he moved to New York City, quickly appearing on The Late Late Show and John Oliver's New York Stand-Up Show, as well as Montreal's Just for Laughs Festival, RIP. His resume has since grown to include The Tonight Show, Conan, Nickelodeon, Last Comic Standing, and his own Comedy Central half hour, and the Comedy Cellar's very, very coveted topical show This Week at the Comedy Cellar. His first fully produced 1-hour comedy special, Cult Classic, has already come out, and we're going to link to all of that. And it's directed by one of my favorite comics of all time, even before he was cool, Nate Bargatze. Joe is also a frequent podcast guest and contributing writer to many, many, many publications. And he was on the Dork Forest with Jackie Cation as well as I have been on that. And I need to know what his nerdy thing was. And he has also done a 5-minute setup. Kate, why can't I talk? He also has a 5-minute Conan setup on YouTube that is hilarious. Did I say that right? He also has a 5-minute Conan set up on YouTube. I've never done this before. Very first interview, very first time I've ever spoken in a microphone. This is good.
Totally.
Yeah. I better know Joe from meeting him one time right now in real time. So Joe, do you think you hit your comedy stride early, and like how did you feel like you did that, and what did you do differently in the beginning that other comics tend to not know how to do, and how did you decide to have Nate direct your special? Tell us all of the things after that clunky ass intro.
I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
And I hope everybody knows that I wrote that whole intro for you to read off word for word. I was like, please read all of these nice things about me, and here's how I'm going to word them. No, I appreciate that. Appreciate that nice intro. Yeah, I mean, starting off at comedy is a long way from me recording Cult Classic with Nate Bargatze this past year. It's a 1-hour special on YouTube. Very excited about it. Starting off at comedy, what did I do differently? I started off in Charlotte, North Carolina. I graduated from Davidson College around age 23 as an English major, and I had no idea what job I was going to do. I had zero clue. I remember people would always ask you, what are you going to do when you get out of college? And I would always say, I'm not sure yet. And they would be like, well, you have plenty of time. And I'd be like, cool. And then senior year, they'd be like, what are you going to do? And I'd be like, I'm not sure yet. And they were just like, oh, it's kind of time to know. But this seems weird in hindsight because I consider myself somewhat introverted and quiet these days when I'm not on stage or doing a podcast. But my friends in college knew me as their funny friend. I knew nothing about comedy, but they would introduce me. They'd be like, this is Joe. He's our funny friend. And somehow I don't know what I would say, but somehow I would live up to that impossible standard and make these college kids laugh. I don't know what I was doing in college, but I obviously didn't have an outlet, so I was doing silly things. And so I was like, well, I guess I want to do something creative, and I'm naturally talented at comedy. I knew nothing about stand-up comedy. So I was like, I'll try an open mic. Well, to be perfectly honest, here's the truth. the embarrassing, humiliating truth, Kate,
Here we
is
go.
that I was like, I have no idea how to get into stand-up. I'll go to a Barnes and Noble and look for how-to books on how to do stand-up comedy.
That's sweet. That's not embarrassing. That's so sweet.
I had no links to the stand-up comedy world. I'd barely seen anything other than Mitch Hedberg. And I think Carlos Mencia. I was like, Mitch Hedberg's hilarious. And Carlos Mencia isn't very funny. So obviously I can be better than Carlos Mencia, which is a terrible understanding of how comedy works.
That's amazing.
Like, just because I don't think Carlos Mencia is funny doesn't mean I'm going to be more successful than him.
What a bar. What a bar. I love it.
So it was a terrible understanding. And I found Judy Carter's Comedy Bible. Chapter 1 is like, sign up for an open mic. So I signed up for an open mic in Charlotte at a coffee shop. I prepared jokes for about a month, and I did my 5 minutes. And it was in front of about 12 people, and, you know, zero laughs. But zero. But I was like, but Judy Carter's Bible was like, don't expect to do great. So I was like, as a follower of the Bible, I'll return for round 2. And I think if I remember correctly, that first night was a sharp dip into the cold plunge waters of how important word economy is.
That's such good. That's so right.
You're like, oh, I can't like talk for a while and then get to a punchline. Like people are bored after 7 seconds. So the second time it was just like a reality check of like, oh, you really just have to do all jokes. There's no story. It's just no stories. And it's just a sharp punch in the stomach of how that works. And so the second time up, it went pretty decent. And then I just kept trying it.
What do you think? So you caught on quickly enough after the first one to recognize, oh, I meandered for too long, or I spoke for too long. So you learned enough between mic 1 and mic 2. What was the timeline between mic 1 and mic 2? It wasn't the next day, I assume.
I think it was literally 2 weeks later at the same mic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you got laughs that time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a better crowd, and I threw away all of the long setups.
Okay. Now, do you feel like, is that a style that you would prefer if it were to work? Do you enjoy storytelling, or do you actually like better joke?
I think that when my friends told me I was a funny friend in college, I think it was all situational and like inside jokes relating probably to college. So I think my persona, my attempted persona was very situational, inside jokey. And again, another sharp reality check of, well, nobody cares. Like nobody gets your inside jokes unless they're on the inside. Literally, it's like long setups, and these people are not your friends. So forget about your friend jokes. There's just so many sharp lessons that first time on stage. So I think I prefer like contextual humor of like, we all know what's going on here, and I can just make a little reference without setting it up.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't fly with stand up.
So do you think, I mean, after that first mic, you weren't, because a lot of people get super defeated the first time that they just eat it in front of an audience and they never go back. And so was there a piece of it that you were able to hold on to of like, even though no one laughed, I still really like this? Or was it, oh crap, I have to go save my reputation?
It was more like I was aware this wouldn't be easy, so I'm going to give it a few more tries. Actually, the silliest, funniest truth is that I was like, well, this is my new career, so I guess I'll just keep going.
That's amazing.
It's like
Well,
it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy to do this internship, but we're going to keep going.
I mean, you almost have to have that, especially with how much Mike's grind out of you. I think, and it's interesting that you chose a market other than Los Angeles or New York, because North Carolina is like close-ish to New York, but it's not like Pennsylvania where you can just like jump on a train and be there in 5 minutes, so not 5 minutes, but so it's interesting. Was North Carolina just like, what drew you there?
I definitely didn't choose it. It was just where I went to college, and I decided to take 3 months after graduating to take it easy in my mind after all the taking the finals and tests, to just chill, work at a coffee shop near campus, and try these open mics, to just have a few months to gather myself. And so Charlotte that was the only open mic within a 50-mile radius, was this twice a month Wednesday night coffee shop in Charlotte.
And then was your goal eventually, because you obviously got to New York eventually, and you kind of hit your stride early relative to the timelines in most people's careers. So when you finally moved to New York, were you like, okay, I've hit the pavement enough. I feel confident that even though I'm going into a new market, I can be a confident comic? Or were you starting at the bottom all over again?
Well, I didn't really have a plan, but I was just trying to learn as I went in North Carolina. And in North Carolina, the big deal comics you meet as an open micer, the big deal comics are the road guy headliners who will stop through every now and then, try out some new jokes. But these guys, some of them hilarious, but all of their work was in the kind of the southern market.
Mm.
And so it couldn't have been a further world away from New York and LA comics. Like, kind of their advice, the big deal comics that I ran into, their advice was like, well, the real comedy is out here on the road, so just stay out here on the road. Like, real crowds are in the South. It took a while to unlearn that and to learn, like, yeah, but if you actually want a career, you pretty much have to spend some time in New York or LA.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And you have to learn that. You learn that kind of just through seeing the comedians you like the most and adding up how many of them haven't lived in New York and LA. And it's like
Zero
or maybe one
Yeah.
out of 1,000. 0 or 1 out of 100.
That's right.
Of your favorite comedians.
0 out of 100. And so get us to, well, what was your nerdy thing that you talked about on Jackie Cation's Dork Forest? Do you remember?
Around 2020, I followed the pandemic trends and I got into bird watching.
That's awesome.
And I've continued to, because Central Park happens to be one of the biggest bird hotspots in the whole world.
What?
So I discovered this like crazy hidden gem of Central Park in the spring. What? All the birds migrating through, the cool ones, mind you, are funneled into Central Park. Like, it's this Airbnb. It's the only Airbnb for them to stay at. And so they're all funneled into Central Park in this focused, intense variety of colorful little creatures. And then on top of that, you got all these bird watchers, because New York is a very population-focused place. So you got all these bird watchers in there. And so not only are all the birds in there, but all the people are in there to tell you where the birds are located.
Oh, I love that.
It's a very, it's actually a much better bird watching experience than most any other place you would go bird watching, because you wouldn't know where the birds are any other place.
Well, and it's a largely solitary activity, minus maybe the other person you would bring with you. But the fact that there's like a community around it, that's super cool. Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, there might have been 300 people gathered around this orange-throated warbler last year, and a lady. We heard its song high up, and when it finally came down close to us, people, cameras were snapping. It was like Taylor Swift paparazzi type stuff.
I love it so much.
And when it flew off, this lady very sincerely was like, "I need a cigarette."
Oh, come on. That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's good times.
I love that. Okay, so that was your dorky thing. And so get us up to today. So your special cult classic is directed by Nate. And what is the, how do you know him? What made you pick him? And why is it called Cult Classic? Like, tell us about the special.
Yeah, Nate's a buddy of mine, and he started selling out clubs, and then he started selling out theaters. And at some point when he started doing bigger theaters, we chatted. I think he did my old podcast, and I happened to usually work cleanish, and so he invited me to come along. A lot of his crowds have kids in the crowd and those sort of things.
Oh, they bring kids.
What?
They bring kids to the show.
They bring kids, yeah.
Wow. Okay. I mean, he works clean, but he's not like, he's not talking about, I don't know, Bluey. He's like, he gets honest. That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's an adult show, but kids can come.
Interesting.
That's how clean it is. But you wouldn't notice it's clean. It's just clean. So he invited me to one of these runs, and I guess it went well. We played golf. We both like golf, and it's the first time golf has ever helped me with my career. When you play golf as a kid, people are like, older guys are like, "This is great. It's going to help you with business." And I'm like, "What? I'm never going to use this for business. I just like playing golf." And literally, I never used golf once until I played with Nate, like 20 years later. I didn't use golf. We just enjoyed playing golf together. Anyway, that's right. That's my in with Nate Bargatze. He only hangs out with me because I play golf.
On the links, you're not funny at all. You just know what an iron, whatever. I know nothing about golf. Go ahead.
So the week was fun, and since then he's just it seemed like he'd blown up a lot then, but he just continued to blow up the last 2 years. Now he's doing. He just did 17,000 seats where the Philadelphia 76ers play.
Oh my gosh! And sold out.
Yeah, I got to perform for 17,000 people.
Holy crap, Joe!
Which is about 16,000 more people than I ever imagined performing for.
That's so exciting. Was it the weirdest, best feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was insane, except we did 16,000 people in Portland a month before. So it's just like, he's just beyond large at this point. He's he's just beyond big. It's crazy. It's wild. Everywhere you're going is selling out. Like, it's hard to even, it's like Taylor Swift, but comedy, basically.
That's so exciting. God bless him. That is so, and what an experience that you're building a bigger audience too, as a result of that. Like, you're going to get fans out of that, even more fans. That's really exciting.
Yeah. I'm like, I most of my set, I just plug my Instagram account. So it's going well. It's going real well.
Stupid.
At Joe Zimmerman. At Joe Zimmerman, by the way.
That's just the whole. You're like, all I need is a tight 5, and all I'm gonna do is just say my handle.
Yeah, it's so he started a production company called Nateland, and he did a special with Mike Vecchione that did very well, and he did a special with Greg Warren that did very well, and it kind of just came up casually. He was like, "Yeah, we'll do one with you at some point." Like, he just says stuff very casually. So I kind of followed up on it, and we filmed a special in Asheville. It just came out on YouTube. It's free. It's called Cult Classic, and yeah, I'm really happy with how it went. And it was cool that he directed it, and yeah, it was my goal to do a 1-hour special at some point. So I'm glad I finally did it. Yeah.
That's great. And what made you want to call it Cult Classic, or will that give away some jokes you don't want to spoil?
2 reasons. I had some jokes about cults, about how cult leaders don't actually get any credit. Like, the ones we hear about are the ones that actually did pretty well. Like, you don't hear about the ones that were just annoying that nobody wanted to follow. And so I talk about how hard it would be to become a cult leader, and how I'd have one guy follow me out to some farm. It would just be like it would just be me and one really clingy guy. It would be like a horrible experience. So I talk about that.
That's very funny.
And then the other is a two-part meaning. The other meaning is that cult classic, movies are movies that got off to a slow start at the box office, but people continued to like over the years. So I'm like, you know what? Hopefully this is one that I feel like this is going to get off to a slow start, and hopefully it just sticks around. So I'm just calling my shots.
I love it. That's great. Well, so we'll post a link in the show notes for how people can find that. And then are you also, are you selling like any part of the audio, or you just release the special for free and you're not going to strip the audio?
Oh, the special's on YouTube, free. But if you prefer audio, it's on Spotify, Cult Classic, or wherever you listen to your albums.
Which though, because we have a very kind audience, which is the better for like a return on investment for like clicks or views? Which do you get a higher percentage of the money from? Is it YouTube or Spotify? I already know the answer, but you got to tell our audience.
I actually am so smart that I don't know the answer to that question.
It's YouTube.
I would
encourage people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you please
go to YouTube, everybody.
YouTube.
Yeah. It doesn't exist on Spotify. Ignore that completely.
YouTube, YouTube is the best place to see it because you get the visual and the audio. And if you just want to listen to the audio, guess what? You can play the YouTube. You don't even have to watch. You can just listen.
That's right. That's why I encourage people to go there. All right. So find Cult Classic. Like I said, we'll link it in the show notes. All right. So Joe, we hope you enjoyed your apps. We're going to move on to the entrees after a quick break. We're back. And now it is time for the entrees. Okay, Joe, what was your first job ever where the government was involved in taking taxes out, or the first job that you're like, this was customer servicey, like paper route or like busboy, something like that?
There were 3 odd jobs that may have come first. One was range ball picker-upper guy at my local golf course, also cleaning out golf carts. And regripping clubs for men that were doing well in life. Another was, I did do paperboy a little bit. And then a third was my friend, I was probably 16, my friend gave me a summer job working in the kitchen at a pizza place called Colasante's in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Oh, that had to be hot.
That was my first experience working with all strangers in a customer service world in the kitchen, where everybody I worked with would take like long 10-minute drug breaks. And I would just be like,
I'll just be
I would
here.
be the guy like that had to like knead all the dough for a while. And it felt like I was like the non-cool kid in high school that was like, nah, yeah, you guys probably, you don't even offer me drugs because like I obviously probably am going to not do them. So I'll just not even be a part of your group.
I'll just be over here.
I'll just be the nerd here that gets all the worst jobs because I don't do drugs.
Oh, I used to complain about this to a boss. Like she managed a restaurant and was not a smoker. And I used to complain to her, all of us non-smokers should still be able to get smoke breaks where we just go outside and breathe for 10 minutes. And she implemented that because she was a non-smoker. And she was like, I totally agree. So I was like, that was the only job at a restaurant I had where they would let non-smokers have the same privileges. For shame.
Yeah, just let us go out and stand by the trash can for 10 minutes.
Yeah, and stare out into the void.
I had a little bit in New York. My first year in New York, it was half bit, half just like trying to get to know people. Because I felt like all the bar shows, people would go hang out front and smoke. When I first moved to New York, that's how you chat with people. And I didn't smoke, so I would bring a little bag of tangerines around. And I would go out front and pull out a tangerine. And while people were smoking, I would peel my tangerine. And people would ask me for tangerines, and I'd pass around tangerines.
That is the best. That is so smart.
It's a good way to hang with the smokers.
Yeah, and also your hands end up smelling like cigarettes. And so instead, they're now smelling like tangerines. So you're helping them, like, I don't know, not stink. That's great. That's a really...
So we'd have a laugh, and people would genuinely be like, I could use a tangerine.
Yeah. Who couldn't? You know what I mean? Like that's a really, yeah, I never turn one down when they're around me. It's one of the few fruits. I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Well, you said it, you framed it in such an interesting way. I've never heard it said that way. A customer service job working with all strangers, because yeah, there is a foray into like when you're babysitting when you're younger, it's like theoretically you know the family or you've met the kids or it's just with two, neighbors. It's fascinating to think like, oh yeah, you do walk into this customer service job and you're like, any of these people could be a psycho killer. Like they could all have crazy past. I know nothing about them other than we're about to share this experience. That's fascinating. I'm gonna think on that.
A lot of times the people that have been there the longest, and this isn't true for all jobs, but in my experience, a lot of times the people that had been there the longest had the most issues.
1,000%.
Had built up the most seniority, but also had the most, like, were the angriest, saddest of everybody.
The level of resentment and the level of seniority are inextricably linked at a restaurant, like no question. And the acting out on that resentment is it's real. Okay, so you said you had three sort of tangentially odd jobs, paperboy being one of them. Were you doing that in like high school, middle school? When were you throwing papers?
Paperboy, I don't remember vividly. I think that must have been middle school. And that's just like a nice lesson on how hard it is to wake up early and do a real job.
Oh, I mean, but early, you're waking up in the middle of the night, like 3:30, 4 a.m. That's too early. Would your parents help you, or was that exclusively like you'd get on your bike?
I always made fun of my buddy Craig, who did it a lot, because his parents would literally do like all of the work. And then he would like chip in. So it's just so funny how much parents were involved in that. I think my mom would help, but I think I did more than Greg did.
I mean, sounds like it.
But it's just like, yeah, I mean, to think that you do that and then go to school for 8 hours, it's like a crazy day that you're just doing at age 13.
Yeah, and did you play sports in high school or college or in middle school?
I did, yeah. So it'd be soccer, and then soccer from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever.
Then you go home, do homework, it's not like you're going to bed at 7 p.m. to get up at 4 in the morning. You're going to bed theoretically at 10 or something. I mean, just, God, youth. It's a lot.
Yeah, and I don't remember the concept of like being tired and having to do self-care. It's just like, you're just like, yeah, this is my life.
There was no self-care. It was just keep going. Okay, now the range ball picker-upper guy, I've had one other guest on the podcast who was involved with a golf course, and he said when he would be in the like machine with the cage around it to pick them up, that there would be golfers that would aim for him, and occasionally it would come through. I'm like, that could be deadly. Like, was that true for you too?
Yeah, the cage. First of all, you're in a cage. And there's a variety of how sturdy these cages are. I was in a very shoddy chicken wire cage that was falling apart. And you feel kind of animalistic jostling around inside of a cage. And you're looking out and people are a little fuzzy because you're looking through wires. And every now and then there's somebody, well, it's usually a teenager. It's usually a teenager just lining up right at you. And so you become aware of it and you learn to steer clear of teenagers, basically. Literally and figuratively. Steer clear of teenagers.
Full stop. End of list. Okay.
But yeah, you can get genuinely injured every night. Also, you have to get out of those things. Like you have to get out of those things sometimes and fix something. So you're just standing there in range of people. So there could be a lot of safe lawsuits involved in those situations. I'm surprised there aren't more safety precautions.
Yeah, me too. Now, usually proximity plays a role into jobs when we're that age. Was there a golf course by your house, which is why you picked it? Or was it, you had mentioned you like playing golf. So was it just, I'm attracted to this sport, so I'm going to find a golf course? What made you pick it?
Yeah, I was attracted to golf, and if I remember correctly, there was a nice golf course in town, and some ramshackle golf courses. And the nice golf course if I worked there, I could play and practice there.
Ah,
So I think we eventually actually did join it, but before we joined it, I think I worked as the range ball picker-upper guy with my buddy Craig, so that we could both play there as much as we wanted and practice. It's also where the high school team played, so it was nice to just be able to play there year-round because of the job and the high school team.
now was this the same Craig that also had his parents doing his paper route for him?
Yeah, I guess our childhood, he lived around the corner. I guess our childhoods were linked.
That's awesome.
That's how whatever sport I played, he would end up playing, and vice versa. Jobs. It's crazy how much you just end up doing whatever your friend neighbor is doing.
It's wild. You got to hope that they're great. And you said cleaning out carts was another part of that job. Did you ever find anything suspect or wild in any of those carts when you were cleaning them out, or was it mostly just like old beer cans and, I don't know, tape or whatever?
I'm sure I did, but the main thing was every now and then after a big shotgun scramble where there's tons of people playing, every now and then you just have a trash bag full of full beer cans. Like people hadn't finished. They'd buy these 6-packs or 12-packs, and so you just have a trash bag. You'd be like a 14-year-old with 800 beers.
Oh my God.
That would happen every now and then.
So would you sell them, drink them? What would you do with them?
I remember being like, cool, and like drinking one and then just kind of feeling crappy and being like, yeah, I'm probably just going to
not do
give
this.
these away.
Okay. So that was
Guinness was a little heavy.
Yeah, it's like a loaf of bread. And then you also regripped, what did you say? Not pole. What do you call them? Clubs? You regripped the clubs?
Yeah. You regrip clubs. But I mean, yeah, I don't like, yeah, you just do a little odd job. It's like you do a little odd kind of blue collar type jobs. It's not like a prep. Golf is a preppy sport, but the people working there are doing, but blue collar type jobs.
Sure.
I guess.
And so
stuff, repairing stuff.
And so would you get tipped when you would do those things, or was it just you were kind of a hang around guy who was getting paid hourly, so whatever they needed you to do, you did?
Yeah, hourly. Really, every now and then when you clean the cart, there'd be like $1 bill, but I wouldn't say it's a high tipping business.
No, can't do much with that dollar. Okay. How many customer service jobs have you had total?
So there's those three. We count those three, and then I was the range ball picker upper guy at a big national golf course, which was the hardest job. For coffee shop barista, 5. Probably around 5 or 6, I would say.
Okay.
Cold calling, if you count that, would be 6 or 7.
Oh, what did you have to cold call about?
When I was trying to make enough money to move to New York in North Carolina, I was doing the road, stand-up comedy on the road. But by the time you pay gas money, you're not clearing that much income. So I was like trying to picture, how do you spend $1,000 a month rent in New York and survive doing the road? So I got a little 20-hour a week type of cold calling job for a comedy agency. Basically, they would give me a list of bars that used to do comedy that no longer do comedy. And I would cold call all these bars, cowboy saloons, hotels, you name it. And it would be like, hi, I'm Joe calling from such and such comedy to see if you'd like to do comedy. And they'd always be like, yeah, we did that. It didn't work. And they'd hang up. Like, this is a great list you guys gave me. You gave me the list of people that are angry at comedy.
Which is so fun. And did you end up, like, was that through a commission, or was it commission based, or was it just like, well, you're going to get hourly, so there wasn't really as much of an incentive?
Oh, man. I wish I was good at negotiating when I was 26 years old, but I agreed to purely do it for commission. So that was a terrible idea.
Oh, Joe.
But somehow I was enough of a hustler to build up some okay commissions over the course of a year.
Wow.
not by like good commission standards, but by standards of getting me to New York to pay my rent just barely.
Okay.
But yeah, I wish I had negotiated for a little base salary.
Just something, just pennies. Okay.
But yeah, every now and then you cold call these people, and they'd be like, it'd be some new owner, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, we do karaoke on Thursday, but we need something on Tuesday.
You're like, great. Throw a mic in there. Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, they'd be like, well, how about we got like a $300 budget, and I'd have to be like, well, we need like $900 plus hotels.
Because you were bringing. It was not an open mic. It was like bringing comics to that location.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to sell them on. I'd have to sell them on this insane package for a one-nighter that almost never worked.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was almost always a money loss for them. So I just felt like I was selling a bad product.
Oh.
But every now and then you'd get a place that it actually worked. Very rarely, but every now and then.
Okay. Yeah. And they're like, we're so glad we picked up the phone. You said the hardest job that you had was at that national golf course. Now, would you say that's your least favorite of all of your jobs was that one, or was it something else?
I think it was the hardest and least favorite. I was all alone in Florida on my own. I didn't know anybody. I was the range ball picker-upper guy at this huge corporation, really, called TPC Sawgrass. It's a famous golf course owned by the PGA Tour.
Oh, wow.
And so the range ball picker-upper guy is like the lowest guy on the social hierarchy and the job hierarchy. So you literally have like 18 different bosses at different levels, and they would all kind of circle around and give you different instructions throughout the week. And it was just a bizarre introduction to the corporate world and the blue collar world at the same time.
That is what that is. That's a hybrid.
And you'd be just jostling around picking up golf balls all day at this fancy golf course, and you'd get a call on the walkie-talkie from Bobby, who fought in Vietnam and would tell you about the STDs he got.
No.
Talk about a guy with seniority. This guy was like 80 years old and worked in the cart barn. So he was the boss. Everybody else there was like 26. And Bobby was 80. And he'd be like, hey, this is cart barn to practice facility. He would call you practice facility. He didn't call you by your name. And he'd be like, we're running low on balls. And I'd be like, yeah, I know. That's all I'm doing is I'm picking up balls.
I have nothing else to do.
Literally, this tractor doesn't drive any faster. But so he would call about once every 2 hours, but hey, we're running low on balls. And then you just bring up the balls the fastest you can. You clean them off and bring them up. And then above him were these, assistant pros, head pros, manager, regional manager, superintendent, head pro, and they'd be like, they'd call you all together like once a month for a team meeting, and you're like, which part of the team am I on?
Where do I fit?
Am I the team member that gets to shoot the shots, or am I like kind of like the janitor who sweeps up after the game is over? I don't really feel like I'm on a team. I feel like I'm all alone out here cleaning golf balls.
Can I get a freaking NBA ring too, or how integral am I to this process? Okay.
I'm always skeptical of corporations that refer to their team members.
Oof. It's like, I guess it's an attempt to not be patronizing, but it ends up being patronizing. It's like, we could just call this what it is. That's oof.
I imagine it works if you feel like you're part of a team, but if you don't feel like you're part of a team, it does not feel good.
Understood. What's the weirdest thing you've been asked to do whilst on the clock?
I have a very vivid memory of one winter in Jacksonville, Florida at this golf course. It got so cold that all the fish died and floated to the surface of all the ponds. And it's known for having a lot of water in ponds. So like for miles, there were just ponds with fish floating on the surface, covered. And it was all tilapia. I haven't had tilapia to this day. If I see tilapia on the menu, I do not go close to it because you smell the fish, and it just was rotting fish. They brought in these companies that dug up giant graveyards and they dumped fish in.
I'm so grossed out.
And people would be playing golf, and there'd be these tractor trailers hauling dead fish.
Did they have a comment of like, hey, we're spending a whole lot of money to be here right now. Could you do this off hours?
I think they had to warn the golfer because the greens fee was one of the most expensive in the country. Also at this place, it was like $400, and now it's like $900. $400 back then was a lot. So they're paying a lot of money. They had to be like, hey, just so you know, we're having a fish problem. But they'd warn them. But anyway, one day we were being visited by the regional manager. This is like a week after the fish had been cleared. The regional manager was coming by, and all the assistant managers were like, we got to make the place look nice for the regional manager so that he says nice things about us. And one guy, one of the assistant pros, drove all the way back to the practice facility where I was located, and he basically asked me. He said there was a couple dead fish up front near the pro shop, and he kind of looked around the practice facility, and he found like a broken golf club, and he was like, maybe you could like spear it with this.
No, come on.
And clear it out of the front just so that the front looks nice for the regional manager.
Tell me you said
and
no.
It was just the most. Also, this wasn't even my boss. It was just a random assistant pro. This is the problem with having 27 superiors. So it wasn't even my boss, but I remember his name was Keith, and I remember not liking him. And so I drove all the way up to the pond with my golf cart and my spear, and I looked at the two dead, rotting fish, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let Keith do this. And I just drove back to the front and never heard anything else about it. Like, he wasn't even my boss. Don't tell somebody to spear dead fish if they're not working for you.
Oh, it's so specific. It's so gross. Okay, that's for sure the weirdest thing. And then was there ever an incident where they wanted to speak to your manager or someone in charge above you because of something that you did or didn't do?
Working as a coffee shop barista, every now and then. The one that I remember was in Charlotte, North Carolina, working as a barista. A guy gave me, I believe he gave me, I forget what bill he gave me. He gave me a bill. I gave him change. And he did like a swishing motion with his hand where you could hear paper swishing. And he held up like a 1. I forget if it was a 1 or a 5, but he was like, hey, you gave me a 5 back and instead of a 20. I'm just making this up. Sure. But it was a bill. He was like, this is a 5 and you owe me 20. And I was like, you just did a swishing thing. You just put the money in your sleeve. And he was like, no, I didn't. But he clearly did. I clearly was just calling him out because I was 22 years old and didn't know any better.
But also he did that.
Like, but also he just did that. I saw it. I was like, you just put it in your sleeve. And he was a shady looking character, let's be honest. And I'd never seen him in there before. But he was like, no, I didn't. I was like, yeah, I just saw you put it in your sleeve. I gave you the correct change. And he was like, nuh-uh. And then ultimately he was like, let me talk to your manager. And the manager came. And the manager knew that I was right and knew this guy was shady, but it was only like the difference of $10. So they were like, we're going to give you $10, just never come back here again type thing.
And did you ever see him again? Did he come back?
No, never saw him again. I think we both gave him enough guff that he was like, that place isn't worth it.
What a good grift, though. I mean, just to be a hustler, just to lie about someone's change that they've given you. Damn. This is what...
If you're going to grift in like $10 quantities because people aren't going to, it's not like worth the fight.
Yeah. It's like robbing a bank for less than $500. You're kind of like, I could just, I can bank hop. I'm not getting 15 grand. Like, yeah, this is good. We're helping criminals.
And this was before like cameras. I bet most places have cameras now.
Yeah. And you
to
hold
show
the
what a
change
person-
up like, here's a 20, here's a 10. Like you just have to get really deliberate with it. That's wild. And what was the last straw that got you out of any of these customer service jobs? Was there a moment where you were like, forget this, burn it all down? Or did you mostly quit to do other things?
Well, the coffee shop, I kind of moved on to do the road, but that was way too soon to do the road. I wasn't making any money. And then I picked up that cold, I think, well, the tilapia was my final straw with the range ball picker guy. I quit a month early and after that. And then the coffee shop, I just moved on to do the road. I was working with good people at the coffee shop. It's really who you work with, obviously. And then the cold calling, I think the cold calling, I was just starting to get called back a lot on my number by weird saloon owners.
Oh, God. Because it was your personal cell phone that you were using?
Yeah, so I'm living in New York. I've moved to New York now. I'm doing these fun bar shows and submitting tapes to late night bookers. And I'm getting like 7 missed calls from a guy in Missouri who wants like a clown at New Year's. And I'm like, I don't think disgruntled clown will do it for that price, sir. I mean, he's disgruntled. First of all, he's disgruntled. He's not going to like that offer.
If only you knew Nate sooner, you could have had his dad do it. Okay.
And second of all, New Year's is a high demand night for comedians. I mean, we're talking triple the price. So I'm just haggling with these weird saloon owners living in Brooklyn.
Whilst you're trying to like do your own comedy career. I hope you talk about that from stage. That's awesome.
I have not yet, but yeah. Also selling them on comedians that are like 40 years in the business who I've never had any contact with. And
you're like, you know who we have? We have Roseanne Barr. And she, let me tell you.
No, it was like Roseanne Barr was way above a much higher bar than what I was working with.
But
I was selling them on like $200, $300 headliners.
Bless. Listen, it's a hustle and it's a grind. God bless. Okay. Yeah. Are you a tipper? Do you tip people?
I do. That is to say, I'm a great person. Everybody listening, I'm a great person.
At Joe Zimmerman.
I've been known to tip upwards of 5%.
Well, stop the presses. Okay.
I definitely tip, having come from the service industry, and I was a $1 tipper at coffee shops, and I've moved up to $2 because of inflation and because I hang out for a couple hours usually.
Yeah, so that's the way to do it. Okay. And is there ever a moment where you were like, okay, this person was so rude or this experience was so bad, I'm not going to tip at all?
That's the irony of tipping. You get the worst service. You get the best service at a restaurant. I'm like 22%. And you get the worst service at a restaurant. I'm like 19.5%.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy?
I'm really gonna punish them with 19.5%.
They're gonna learn. They're gonna go to the next table and be like, "Oh, we've reformed."
And usually somebody's like mean to you or indifferent. Half the time you're like, I'm gonna tip them just as well to try to get them to like me more.
Mm-hmm. It's a grift. I mean, there's a reason you tip at Dick's Last Resort. I mean, there's just it's weird.
Yeah, especially New York. Like, there's some very unfriendly bartenders, and that does not affect the tip at all.
No, because it's like, oh, it's New York. And look at this charm of bitterness. Okay. Did you ever work a position where you were tipped, where you like required, because I know you said there'd be like $1 in the cart and you like worked in the pizza kitchen, but did they tip you out before they, like the servers and stuff at the pizza kitchen, or no?
Pizza kitchen, no. Range ball picker upper guy, I think we got a small little percentage of the tips.
Oh, like if they tipped the caddy, then the caddy threw it into a pool?
Yeah, but you got a smaller percentage than the cart guys got.
Sure. I mean, I get it.
Baristas, you split out the tip jar. That was a very common thing. You pour out the contents of the tip jar when your shift is over. You turn all the pennies and quarters into bills and you split it out.
Gosh, I remember.
Yeah, every time somebody new takes on the shift, you split out the tip jar.
Yeah. Did you ever catch anybody doing anything nefarious with the split tips?
I never caught anybody, but I'm also not the type of person that was like looking,
Like, oh, don't do that. Okay.
I better be getting my full $7.
Don't you give me 6. Have you ever been fired from a customer service job?
I left early the pizza place.
Sure.
I left early the range ball place. I think the closest, I don't think I've been fired. I think the closest I came was basically working for a year at a coffee shop and then sort of getting offered a lower. I think this is the closest I've been to being fired. Was I had I had a lazy-ish year because I was doing so much comedy. So it totally made sense they would do this. They basically offered me a lower salary the following year than my previous year. So it's like I didn't get demoted, but they were like, "We're going to pay you less this year
for the same job." You're like,
so
noted.
I moved on. I moved on because it felt sort of.
It was a soft firing.
It just felt like a bad feeling.
Yeah, you're like,
and I was like, I didn't do a good job. I was on the road, every weekend.
You're like, I can see the writing on this wall. Okay. And last question in this section, who's the worst customer you ever interacted with other than like the guy who stole that money? Or can you give an archetype of who the worst customer would be to interact with?
A coffee shop archetype is the person that is just like assumes that you're like, what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of assume that they kind of assume that it's your job to remember them after they've been there once. There would be a few people that would come in and you'd never seen them before. And they'd be like, I'm going to have
the usual
an almond milk latte with extra whipped cream and a little bit of caramel. I want extra ice and an extra large cup. And that's going to be my usual. And you're like, yeah, you don't have a usual. This is the first time I've seen you.
Also, I can't be asked to care.
You can't have a future usual until I've seen you at least 3 times.
I can't believe the declaration. And that's going to be my usual. Like, what an arrogant, I strive to have a modicum of that amount of confidence where I'm like, I go into places and I let them know. Like, you know what? I'm a little jealous of the usual people. God bless.
I don't want people to remember my usual, by the way. I want to have the opportunity to mix it up every now and then.
Yeah, let's get crazy with it. Okay. Well, now we're going to move on to the good stuff. We hope you saved room for dessert. Which was your favorite job of all of the jobs you've had? You can't say comedy.
Favorite job?
Yeah.
Boy, that is a tough question because all jobs are jobs,
I mean, yeah.
Jobs by definition
are actually jobs. It's in the definition.
We're going back probably that first, if I remember, probably just the sweetness of that first golf course job because I was working with my buddy. I knew the head pro. It's basically a job where you're surrounded by people you know.
Yeah.
And so you're not exposed to the real world of strangers.
Yeah.
Stranger danger.
Stranger danger. Yep.
So that job was nice because you're working with everybody you know. Working with buddies. Favorite job? Yeah, I'll say besides stand-up comedy, I'll say that one.
Okay, I love it. Okay. What would you say is this isn't on my list of questions, but I'm curious. Is there an aspect of stand-up that you're like, this is when it feels like a job?
Ooh, wait, I just thought of one.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
When I was at Davidson College, what are those work programs they have for students?
Work study.
Student work.
Yeah.
Work study. Uh-huh. I had a work study where I worked at the local classical music station.
How fun.
And my job was to, every hour when the disc ended, was to put in a new disc. And so I would just sit there and listen to classical music for 4 hours and rotate the disc 3 times. And that was my job.
I bet you wish you knew what
That
your
was the
major was
best
going to
job.
be. Yeah, that was
That
your
was the
favorite.
best job. I got so much reading done.
I bet you
It was
did.
incredible.
I love it. Okay.
And I only got called one time by the boss to say that I had forgotten to change the disc.
You're like, is anyone listening? He's like, I am actually. I have to be. So change it.
Yeah, he's got to deal with 20-year-old, and he's got to listen in on his own radio station.
It's like, you guys are screwing this up. I love it. What's your favorite part of doing comedy? Like, if that is, since that can't be the favorite job, what is your favorite piece of it? On the business, obviously performing is like, obviously that's the most fun, but is there a business side of it that you like?
Well, I'll throw a curveball and say, for me, it's not. I think I'm slightly different than most of the comics I know in that performing is not actually my favorite part. My favorite part is like writing the ideas
Oh, that's interesting.
down and sort of coming up with the ideas.
I love that.
I think I have more of a writer personality.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I like coming up with the jokes, running the jokes by friends, and I think that's my favorite part.
I love that. Okay, what's the nicest thing a customer has done for you whilst you were working?
Nicest thing a customer has done for me. Just the $100 Christmas tip, I would say.
Hello. That doesn't suck. Yeah, $100 Christmas. Yeah. Okay. What is the best lesson that you have personally learned from working in customer service?
Ooh, best lesson. I mean, it's kind of hard to put it into words, but it's that sort of being able to relate to the real world of real world jobs that most people have. I mean, I imagine most of the population in the world has these hourly jobs where you do challenging work or unrewarding work for the man. And until you do it, it doesn't really register, what it feels like to earn a paycheck, I guess. So it's nice to I would say the biggest thing is just the kind of the reality of it.
Sure. Okay. And what's one piece of advice you would give to customers who interact with customer service workers?
Customers who interact. Oh, just that, you don't have, if you have a complaint, like, you don't have to be mad about it. Like yelling and demanding a manager isn't always the best tactic.
What?
Also, what was the other thing? Oh, also they say, somebody at a point, somebody said the customer's always right. And that's just a flat out lie. So just remember, customers are wrong quite a bit. It's more likely the person working there every day
that maybe knows
what's going on.
That is correct. Okay, well, Joe, how can people again just like plug the album, get us to find you on? What was your Instagram? We haven't done your handle yet, so I haven't heard it.
At Joe Zimmerman.
Oh, okay. 2 M's.
That's my Instagram. Yeah. 2 M's.
Okay.
It's I put the merman in Zimmerman. I just posted some inspirational quotes yesterday, so you can get some inspiration on my Instagram.
Wow. Inspirational Instagram. Joe Zimmerman, king of that. That's good.
That's right.
That's the brand. Okay. And then we can find the special on YouTube, which is, once it's monetized, that's the better option over Spotify. So it's called Cult Classic. And you can just search it on YouTube. Well, folks, we're going to drop your checks now. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to help us out here at Service from Hell, we'd love to have you subscribe, rate, and or review the show wherever you listen. It helps us reach more people that need to be schooled in the art of being kind and is catharsis for those of us still working in the industry. If you want to get in touch with us here at Service from Hell directly, send us your receipts to servicefromhellpodcast@gmail.com. We always love hearing from you, and I promise we read all the emails. Remember, if you can't afford to tip, you can't afford to go out, so don't be garbage and be good to people. It's easier that way. Joe, thank you so much for being on. This was great, and you are very funny.
Thank you for having me. That was very fun.
I'm glad you were here.
I'm very grateful. I would love to tip you, and to all the fans, y'all should Venmo Kay to tip.
Hell yeah. Yes. I love that. Thanks, Joe. That's going to be the outro for all of the episodes now.
Remind us your Venmo.
Oh, it's at the Kate Gaffney. So there you go.
Yeah, let's go with the theme and
Yeah.
and throw you a little tip.
Love it.
Know?
Thanks, Joe.
20%.
Little 20. Little 20 on there. Thanks, Joe. And thank you folks so much for listening. Good night.
I'm doing one more Nate run that goes Nevada somewhere and ends in Anaheim, April 4 to 6.
Hell yeah. Okay. And then do you ever go out on your own?
And then I'm doing a very strange corporate gig for the Sheetz Gas Station Corporation.
I love Sheetz. I love Sheetz. The people are loyal to Sheetz like they are to Buc-ee's, and they are competitors. Yes. And Sheetz is, I could go on and on. Oh, that feels like that would be a really fun crowd because it's a family owned, or it was. I don't know that it still is, but Sheetz was family owned.
Just so I know, what are your favorite things about Sheetz?
Okay, it's twofold. You can get coffee as soon as you walk in on one of the machines, and you can like make it specifically exactly how you want it. Or you can have a barista make it for you, and they have all the flavors, like all the syrups year round. They're not limited to like, okay, well, this season is pumpkin and this season is mint. Like you can go in the middle of summer and be like, I want a chocolate mint, or peppermint water. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And they also have food made to order. So you go to the machine. I think everybody just likes it because it's like the computer that you get to just tailor everything to yourself. So it's like a gas station, but not really. But oh my gosh, I went on tour in Ohio this past year and I learned about Sheetz because they didn't exist when I was growing up, or I didn't know about them. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think it rivals Buc-ee's in my opinion.
Okay, beautiful. I know people talk about Wawa in the Northeast, and Sheetz in the Mid-Atlantic area.
If you bring up Buc-ee's, you'll get like there will be a big reaction, and you could bring up Wawa's too, but yeah,
of booze.
Well, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it will divide them unless you talk shit about Buc-ee's. So
okay, good. Perfect.
Make sure you mention it and say the beaver is a mess or whatever. I don't know. You're funny.
This is beautiful. This is good field research. So thank you.
As a sample size of one, I speak for all of us. It's good.